Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Couple of Nukes. As always, I'm your host, Mr. Whiskey, and today we're going to be talking about something hinted at throughout the series and something that I preach a lot, which is the use and abuse and distribution of so much medicine, especially to veterans and military and even just civilians. So many chemicals and drugs being pumped out there, whether it's for monetary gain or other reasons. But we're going to talk about how healing can be done in so many other ways and with so much more naturalness to it. And today we have an expert in all of that brain chemistry, hormones, and just your body with some great books and some great knowledge to share with us. So, Dr. Sarah Doyle, will you please introduce yourself for us?
Hi, pleasure to be here. Yeah, I'm a doctor of physical therapy, and I started my career working in hospitals bedside. I love the adrenaline of it. I didn't even know that existed. When I started physical therapy school, I thought I was just going to be like doing sports medicine, a little massage, and some
Right.
weight. I thought it was going to be like a glorified personal trainer. But when I went through the program, they make you intern in different locations. And I love the hospital. It was like, people don't go to a hospital unless they're going to die if they don't. So it's a great time to mentor people when they're at that, like, I call it a come to Jesus moment. Uh,
Yeah.
so it's a great time to mentor them. But not only that, it's like they're really critically ill. And my job was to teach them to walk again, teach them to sit up again, depending on, sometimes they're half paralyzed, they had amputations, I worked in ICU trauma. But then I worked in oncology. My godfather got lung cancer, and I got a job at the hospital where he was being treated, and he died in the middle of my shift. So I made really good friends.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy, right? I made good friends with the oncologists, and just, they trusted me and they kind of took me in as one of their own. And so I started working with a lot of the oncology patients. And that's where I was like, oh my God, like all this could be prevented with good nutrition, but we're not taught that in school at all. Like, okay, I had 20 pages in one chapter of one book among we had to read
Yeah,
500.
of course.
Yeah, we read 500 pages a week for 7 years. And I got like what, 20 pages on nutrition. So, people would say to me in the hospital beds, like, isn't there anything else I can do? All they're doing is giving me more prescriptions. They don't even know what's wrong with me. And I was like, that's right. They don't. Like, what is this healthcare system about? And then I worked in COVID ICU, and that was like the nail in the coffin for me. Like, ethically, I watched so many drugs be pushed on people, and other
Yeah.
drugs that help them be withheld, and I just ate my soul. It was in this time, when I worked in the oncology, I was like, I started researching functional medicine, and I realized that in the hospital I was working in dysfunctional medicine. That's the allopathic healthcare that we've all been like brainwashed to think there's the only option. And so
Right.
functional medicine looks at the root cause. Like, instead of just looking at your symptoms, we look at, because your symptoms, like, I get people with fatigue. Well, that could be from hormones, from brain chemicals, from toxins, from this insomnia. Same thing. It can be from mold toxicity, pesticide toxicity. Like, I have to look at everything. We work backwards. We use functional medicine testing, like testing that you can't get at your regular doctor, and we look backwards to see what's that root cause, and then we attack it from there, so that we're not just doing symptom management. Like, we're getting rid of. It's like, if you're poking or cutting your finger, you put a band-aid on it, but, like, you got to get rid of the razor blade that's cutting your finger, right? So it's like, and that's what we do. And so I got certified in functional medicine, and then I got board certified in nutrition. And in those programs, I learned how to use vitamins, minerals, herbs, amino acids properly timed, and how to utilize different functional medicine testing. Like, I do a lot of urine panels. I had no idea that our pee was so valuable. Like,
Mm.
literally everything that's happened in your body in the last 24 hours comes out in your pee, right? That makes
Yeah.
sense. So we look at all those metabolites. I can get toxic metabolites like estrogens, like, where, like, there's a lot of chemical exposures, the xenoestrogens. We can look at the stress. So, when I'm working with different patient populations, sometimes their cortisol levels are really out of whack. And so we can start there, and that affects their sex hormones. I look at thyroid and heavy metals, because a heavy metal, like, whether it's from eating a lot of fish, or being, in an environment where there's water, or you're breathing in like dust of heavy metals, like, you get these buildup, and then things, your body's like a symphony, and everything needs to play just
Right. Yeah.
perfectly. So when one instrument is too, it's like going to like a middle school band recital. You're like, oh my God, that one is like out of whack, you know?
Yeah.
So when that happens, we need to retune everything and get it working better together in harmony.
Yeah, you said that what I like the most is that we are very much in a society and time where it's symptom management. I like how you said that.
Mhm.
And I totally agree with that 100%, especially in terms of when we're just, putting so many young women specifically on antidepressants, multiple different kinds, or swapping through them and not actually treating the root cause. And it's something I've talked about a lot with alcoholics and addiction as well, is we always have to pinpoint that root cause, which there's going to be several layers before you get to the main root cause. And I
Mhm.
think an issue we've talked about is a lot of people drinking just to reset their liver or get rid of their physical ailments and then go back to drinking while not addressing that root psychological cause. Not to say there isn't physical causes, especially once you become addicted. But yeah, and I agree with you
Both.
about,
Yeah, for sure. Like I was in a passenger in a car accident and I had really, really bad pain. And this is after the opioid crisis, and they wouldn't give me enough pain medication. And I started drinking. I was drinking. I mean, this was like 13, 14 years ago when I was in school, and it hurt. I couldn't sit in a chair. And I was working in a nightclub to put myself through school. And so I just started drinking. Like I was in so much pain. And I thought to myself, this is how chronic pain patients become alcoholics. I was like, they don't have another
right,
choice. There's no other choice. So when people are dealing with that kind of pain, and then there's also genetic predisposition. So when we do the brain chemistry test, where we look at the urine metabolites, genetically, we have genes that are coded to make enzymes. And so not all of our genes are perfect, right? They're called SNPs, single nucleotide polymorphisms. We're not perfect. But so some people, you can see why alcoholism runs in families, because they'll have really high glutamate levels, and alcoholics self-medicate because alcohol binds to the GABA receptors in the brain. GABA is like a calming neurotransmitter, whereas glutamate is the most abundant excitatory neurotransmitter. There's like
mm,
glutamate, and like if you look at a Red Bull, there's like, I think that has like ingredients in it. But at any rate, people who are alcoholics, they just have really high glutamate, and they're like intrinsically, like they're self-medicating, and that's how genetics can play a part in alcoholism. You got to have compassion and look at it like people aren't inherently bad. They're
yeah.
just trying to help themselves.
Yeah, no, I agree with the self-medication part, and I've seen some military side, I've seen some patients who suffer from severe migraines, and what their solution was to try and numb the people's nervous systems or block the receptors between the body and the brain so that they just don't feel the pain from the migraines, but they're still happening. And I just personally don't agree with, numbing, because now my friend, he is numb his whole nervous system to a lot of things, also just emotionally, the medicine they're putting him on. He's talking about his sense of taste changing, his sense of smell, his sense of feeling stuff. Like he's not self-harming, but like he poked himself with a knife and it's like it feels so dull and it's a sharp knife,
Oh my
or
God,
they're like
that's
kind of trying to
crazy.
disconnect his nervous system from it to block the migraines because all the other treatments haven't worked. And it's the thing with like people who can't feel pain, right? If he puts his elbow down on a hot stovetop by accident, he's not even going to notice. And then the damage, we have a connection to tell us there's pain for a reason, right? It's to preserve
Yeah,
our body.
exactly. Yeah, to not the noxious stimuli. So that happens with diabetics too. That's why like they get cuts on
Yeah.
their feet because their feet are numb, and then they get amputated. Like it's crazy. But
Oh
you're
yeah.
right. And I listened to a lecture from a migraine doctor. He's a functional medicine doctor. Can't remember where he's from. I think he's from like Oklahoma or something. But anyways, he was saying people, if you take an MRI of a migraine sufferer, their brains show similar changes that you would see if you took an MRI of somebody with multiple sclerosis. Is that
Hmm.
crazy? Like,
That's interesting.
yeah, super crazy. So and I actually know somebody who had like a misdiagnosis. I live in Miami, so I knew somebody that was getting, some scans done. And the resident, it's a teaching hospital, right? University of Miami. So the resident preliminarily said that it looked like she had multiple sclerosis. She's like, oh my God, that's horrible. It's a death sentence. And it turned out that was really just from migraines. It's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, the brain is pretty, yeah, there's a lot we don't know.
Yeah, that's for sure. There's some crazy things out there, and you talk about genetics, and some of the genetic rarities and mutations that happen are just mind blowing. Some of them positive, some of them not so positive. I love looking at genes and genetic mutations that are beneficial in some ways. Like I've studied cases of people who have mutations where their bones are 5 times denser than normal. So their ability to survive, damage such as car crashes and stuff is significantly increased, but their
Cool.
ability to jump and swim is decreased because they're heavy. Their bones are just 5 times denser. And, it's where the average human bone density is, it's kind of designed to be the ideal, right? So as cool as it is to go denser and be more durable per se,
Mhm.
it does come with downsides. Vice versa, if you're super light boned, maybe you swim faster and fly further, so to speak, but you're not as durable. So it's interesting to see how the body changes.
Yeah, there's another instance, like an example of that I use with sickle cell anemia. So that like a heterozygous trait is actually protective against malaria. That's why African
Mm.
Americans have it. But then if like both parents donate the trait and it's homozygous, that's when the disease presents as sickle cell anemia. But just having a heterozygous trait was protective against malaria. So that's another adaptive. Yeah. The body's cool. God made us like pretty resilient.
Oh yeah, we used to joke. I had a buddy who had sickle cell, and we were working on the submarine aircraft carrier together, and he would say it's to cut the radiation in half, so I'm immune to half. He was like the sickle cells are shaped like that, so they can cut the radiation. Not scientifically accurate, but we used to joke around like that. It was pretty
Mhm.
funny. But yeah, I like something else you said, which was the public education system's failures. I'm not pro public education system, unfortunately. I think there's a lot of improvement in a lot of areas, and health and nutrition is definitely one of them. But it's not just the education system, it's social media as well, promoting, right, unhealthy eating. We see it in the vending machines, what they put available. We see
Yeah.
in the price, right? You look at healthy cereal. If you go to a cereal aisle in general, you look at the ratio of healthy to non-healthy, and then you look at the prices as well. It's almost like forcing your hand to buy unhealthy cereals, and which one will have all the deals on it as well. Get 2 for $7 or 3 for $7. It's the unhealthy cereals. And then you look at social
Mhm.
media promoting unhealthy eating, mukbang videos, and then also just that fat is beautiful, therefore it's healthy. You can be overweight and beautiful, I'm fine with that, but saying therefore that makes it healthy. Well, beautiful and healthy are two very different things. We've seen
Yeah.
that in cases, both scales. Also with women who are anorexic or skinny, you may be beautiful, but you're malnourished, right?
Yeah,
Or if
exactly.
you have bulimia or whatever other eating disorders, and social media is pushing that, even if it's not straight up just saying be fat and be unhealthy or be skinny and be unhealthy, the values it puts out about sexual quality and self-esteem and beauty kind of forces people. We see a lot of young women, and this is something even before social media, of course,
Yeah.
eating disorders aren't new, but you're definitely right. Nutrition education is not being put out, especially like you said, 20 pages or even less, and it's not really
Right.
an in-depth thing. I think the health classes in general, most people don't get sex ed till, I mean, for me, it was like junior or senior year of high school, right? And
Mhm.
so high schoolers should get that upfront, I believe, especially with social media giving so much access to sexual content out there. I mean, I think senior
Yeah.
year, as one girl in my class said, it's too late now. Most high schoolers have made their mistakes, or we're just misinformed about stuff. And it's the same with, smoking information, drug information, alcohol abuse, and health, just health in general. What they put out is the food pyramid or the food plate, whichever one is now
Oh
existent,
my
and
God. It
who
needs to
knows
be
if it's
turned
going to
upside
change again.
down. Yeah, you're right. It's all by lobbyists. I talk about that in my coaching program. I have a biohacking boot camp where I focus on perimenopausal, menopausal women, and then men in andropause, like manopause. Because men's, we don't really talk about that. Like guys hear hormones and they think that's just a woman's problem. But with all
Right.
the chemicals in food, I get guys in their 30s that have lower testosterone levels than other men in their 70s. Like it's
Yeah.
crazy how our food supply is poisoning our young men and women, and it's causing infertility. That's it's a huge problem. I definitely agree with you there. I think We need some nutrition education, and then we also need some financial education. That would probably help or give people some sense of accountability, because there's no accountability being taught to this generation. They just want to
Yeah,
like, blame it on somebody else or wait for somebody else to scoop them up, when really all the answers are in you and your daily habits.
for sure. Yeah, I definitely hear a lot of Gen Zs and alphas and even millennials just blaming the generation prior for doing all of this. And I definitely agree. It's like, well, yeah, we can if each generation just blame shifts the last one, well, the last one's not gonna, be like, you're right, it's my fault, let me fix it. And the current generation is not gonna say, all right, it's on us to fix this. And the new generation is gonna do that either. So you just have this endless cycle of no change and just complaining. And I
Mm-hmm.
agree, financial literacy would definitely help people with budgeting their groceries and just in general being able to have time for fitness, time for health. And so you talk about this biohacking boot camp. Tell us a little bit more about your personal journey toward creating that program. I know you kind of dove into the why, the moments that changed your life, but what are you doing now with it? How does that work?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I want to say like it really started. I had an adverse reaction to an antibiotic when I was 22 years old. So that was, well, more than 20 years ago. So for many years, I was really sick. I had a lot of food allergies. I had difficulty digesting foods. I thought I had like IBS. I thought I had Crohn's. It was all from this antibiotic. It totally depleted my microbiome. So I could never. I was eating digestive enzymes with every meal. I had heartburn. I had trouble with food sensitivities. So that was my personal journey. I did a lot of reading. And as I was working I was first a massage therapist and a physical therapist. I was health coaching people back then before that was a thing. I was taking tons. I always had a budget for vitamins. I always gave myself $200 a month to pay for vitamins. And that was a while ago. Now it's more like 400 or 500 because of inflation.
Right.
But like, even like 10, 20 years ago, I always had that. I always made sure I had that nutrition, because I knew that I knew what it was like to be sick. And so I was working with people. For many years I've been practicing and influencing people. And then when the pandemic happened and we were all locked down, I was getting contacted by all these physical therapy companies that wanted me to do a telehealth, and they wanted to use my relationships with the insurance companies. And I thought, well, I'm going to work for myself. Why am I going to make you money? So I
Right.
opened up a telehealth company, and I started doing the functional medicine coaching for free to friends. And then I got referrals. And then once I got the certifications, I started charging. And what I found was that we started with nutrition. We started with my book, 7X Method. As a sidebar, dentistry is like another thing that we don't prioritize in this country. It's
Yeah.
treated like a luxury. Like it would have been, I was in a car accident. I had some fractured teeth back by my jaw that they had to pull out. Like, thank God they weren't in the front. But I went to dentist here, and to get everything restructured from a biological dentist that didn't use harsh chemicals, it was almost $30,000. I was like, that is crazy. So I had a friend who was an expat in Central America, and he's like, just come stay with me. Everything was shut down. I was studying for my functional medicine program, and he's like, oh, you got to meet this guy in town. He's my buddy. You guys are always talking about like energy and this and that. So I meet his buddy. It turns out this guy is a liaison for this quantic medicine program, where they're for like over 50 years. They've been healing people from like diseases just using food as medicine. It's all based on the circadian rhythm of the sun and our body, our organs and systems. So what I didn't never realize was that we have our main circadian rhythm. We wake up in the morning when sun
Right.
rises, we open our eyes, and then we sleep at night. But all of our organs and systems take turns peaking and resting and activity. And so when they get off their work shift, they want a certain type of food. And so in this program, there's no such thing as calories, fat grams, anything. The energy of food is measured by its like quantic energy, and they use it. Think of like the periodic table of elements, how we were taught about
Yeah.
the valence electrons had different charges. So different foods have different charges, and different
Right.
body systems want a different charge at a certain time. So I was like, man, remember I was sick from the antibiotic for 20 years. So I was like, I'll give it a try. I'm telling you, within 2 weeks, I never took another digestive enzyme again. And that was like after 20 years of taking double doses. Like a lot of my food sensitivities went away. I used to get diarrhea when I would eat certain foods, and I could enjoy certain foods again. Like I hadn't eaten fruit in almost 20 years without getting sick.
Wow.
All of a sudden I could eat it again. I was like, this is crazy. So I structured like a 7-day reset. So when I got my coaching clients, I onboarded them, I ordered all their tests to get shipped to their house, and then we started with the diet. And they're like, I lost a pant size this week. What is up? Because all the inflammation goes down. And so in the book, I looked for as much research to back it up as we have. What I did learn is that the 2017 Nobel Prize for medicine and physiology was awarded to 3 scientists who discovered that we have a clock gene in every cell. So every cell in our body has circadian rhythm. So we're in the Western world, we're just like on the cusp of it. Less than 10 years been studying it, right? Whereas this little healing center has been doing it for 50 years. So I start with that, and then we do hormone testing, stress hormone, sex hormone, thyroid, heavy metals, and then the brain chemistry. So when we get those results back, my clients have a one-on-one. It's everything's done telehealth, so I can reach
Yeah.
people all over the country who don't have access. There's a lot of cities where like you have to drive 100 miles to find a holistic doctor. So we talk about everything. We do the one-on-one, and when we look at everything at the same time, and we just attack everything at the same time, people feel such a dramatic change. And especially when you work with the brain chemistry, it helps the change be long term, because it's like you get off a hamster wheel. Like, I mean, I've had some mild TBI. I've had like 6 concussions. I used to be a fighter, and then I had some car accidents. So those symptoms mimic ADHD. There's like ADHD and mild traumatic brain injury have the same list of symptoms. So
Interesting.
yeah, right. So you can take what you get from that brain chemistry test and we take therapeutic levels of pharmaceutical grade nutraceuticals. So strong vitamins you can't buy at Walmart or Amazon. And we take sometimes double doses, sometimes triple doses, depending on the genetics, the environment, and, just the person's response. So we meet every week, every Tuesday. We have a mastermind where I teach on a certain topic, open it up for Q&A. My clients have 24/7 WhatsApp support from me. So that really makes a difference between me and my competition. Like Tony Robbins is a spokesperson for mylifeforce.com. I think Andrew Huberman's also now joined as an influencer. Mark Hyman in Cleveland Clinic with Function Health. Who else I get clients from? Oh, the Grant Cardone and Gary Brecka 10X Health System.
Yeah.
So those are like my competitors. Oh, then there's Rebel Health Alliance. That's a little bit newer one, and it has almost the same services as me, but it's a bunch of Harvard doctors. But these companies, they are so big that they lose the personal touch. I only
Right.
I take on 20 clients a month so that I can, keep track of them and not just pawn them off to some random health coach or somebody else. Like, I get people from those big name companies, and they're like, yeah, I took all this testing, but so what? I don't know what to do. So it's what I do. I know my clients get really great results. And if they don't get it in the first 10 weeks of the boot camp, I don't let them go. Like, they can keep coming to the masterminds. They can keep texting me. If we need to order additional testing, we can do that. I have access to hundreds of tests. So, it's really life-changing. It hasn't been easy. I've been doing it since 2021. It took like, I don't know. Listen, when I went to college, I didn't even have an email address.
Wow.
Like, we had libraries with the Dewey Decimal System and the card catalog. And then when I worked as a realtor, we had advertising in the Homes and Land magazine, and we used fax machines. And then I went to school for healthcare. So I worked in hospitals. So for me, the biggest learning curve is social media, social marketing, like
Right.
digital marketing. Like, that was not a thing. So for someone, I'm Gen X. So that's been a big learning curve for me. It hasn't been easy, but the clients are getting really good results. And I mean, that's really the main thing. The main thing is I know I'm changing lives when people had no hope anywhere else.
Yeah, so a little bit of a pivot, but I'd like to revisit your fighting days. I'm interested in that. What kind of fighting were you doing?
Oh man, I started out just doing like the martial arts. I had a Korean Taekwondo teacher he was a medalist in the 80s, 1980. I know he went to the 1980 Olympics that we boycotted because it was in Moscow or something like that. But I'm thinking I'm getting my facts wrong, but he was really badass. And I had different jobs, different apartments, different boyfriends, different cities, but I always
Right.
stayed with that, and it was kept me grounded. and I learned all that discipline. I was with that one instructor for like 10 years. And then I got into my black belt, and I was going to go to my second degree, but I was like, you know what? I have no hand skills. My feet skills are awesome. Like I could do all these cool things, but
Yeah.
like somebody jumps me. So I got into other martial arts. I did some Muay Thai, did some jujitsu.
Nice.
I went to a Puerto Rican boxing gym. I did that for a couple years. And then I just started doing some mixed martial arts where it was like, I want to call it like, we knew that we had real day jobs, so we didn't like break each other's faces. We didn't go because that's kind of like like a chokehold and like a broken nose. Those are like easy cop out moves. Like if you want to really show that you're good, you'll do some other kind of thing, like I guess like an arm bar or whatever. So I used to do like underground like fights, like I guess like Fight Club.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah, I did that until I was 31. Once I got into the physical therapy school, and I was like, all right, I'm going to be spending like $200,000 and I need to use my hands when I graduate. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's time to hang up the gloves, but I love it and I've used it a few times. It's an invaluable skill. Like I had somebody try to grab cash out of my hand. This is before we had Apple Pay. And I did a wrist lock on him and he was like, and I got all my cash back. Like he tried to take like
Nice.
so I used that. And then another time, my girlfriend and I, we were like at a martini bar and some guy followed us to our car. And
Mm.
I did a low blow. I kicked him in the nuts, but he crashed to the ground and we were able to get to our car safely.
Wow, that's pretty awesome. Yeah, I was not expecting the fighter side of you. Dr. Sarah Doyle, also a fighter, so that's awesome. And talking about the physical therapy and rehab, it sounds like you had a lot of, work satisfaction, job satisfaction because you saw the recovery, you were a part of that, and you saw people go from not being able to walk to being able to walk again. So I can
Yeah.
imagine a greater, job satisfaction and joy than that.
Yeah, it was. I'm in my 40s, so I can't keep doing like when you work in a hospital, you're doing heavy lifting. Like people used to ask me
Yeah.
all the time, like, what CrossFit gym do you go to? And I was like, no, dude, I deadlift people who just had a stroke and they're like half paralyzed. Like,
Right.
try that. But like
Yeah.
I can't do that. Not with 3 car accidents. So I had to pivot into the functional medicine, which really feeds my soul because I saw so much disease that could have been prevented. Like, for example, 1 out of 6 Americans gets Alzheimer's. That's type 3 diabetes. Like, how can we prevent that? All these diseases start in midlife. That's why I'm so passionate about talking about my coaching program and trying to reach
Right.
people in their 40s and 50s. Because, yeah, you get diagnosed when you're 70s, but this disease, it took 20 years to get there or more.
Yeah.
So, you start early and you don't have to be a burden to your family. Like when you're in a hospital, let me tell you, the number one thing people like, they felt ashamed. They felt like they were useless. They felt like they were a burden to their family. They didn't want anybody to visit them or see them that way. It was a horrible way to spend the end of your
Yeah.
life. So it's like, if I can do anything to keep people from doing that, like by all means, like, heart disease is the number one killer of men and women. 1 in 4 guys, 1 in 5 women, they'll die of a heart attack or a brain attack, a stroke, right? And a lot
Awful.
of this can be prevented just by keeping adequate sex hormone levels. Sex hormones are more than just having sex. They protect your brain from Alzheimer's, like the estrogen receptors protect the brain. Testosterone helps with movement. Like there's studies about people with Parkinson's, like men with Parkinson's getting testosterone injections and improving their mobility. We need to sex is so taboo. Like you said, you didn't get any education in school till it was too late.
Right.
Like stop taught make it's not. God gave it to us to procreate. He made it the best feeling thing ever. So we would keep doing it. So why do we have so much shame around it? Like we need to talk about sex hormones. We need to talk about how that all intertwines and protects us from disease. It should not be taboo. Like you should be able to go to your doctor at any age and be like, hey, I want to check my sex hormones and get it covered by insurance. It shouldn't be like, oh, well, you don't fit the profile. I don't think insurance is going to cover it. Like
Right.
I hear that all the time from people like, oh, my doctor won't order it. My doctor won't get it. Like it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
What I'm really interested in is seeing my generation and the younger generations. We talk about how the food is messing with our sex hormones and just our hormones in general, but also, without getting too political, there's a lot of injections happening. There's a lot of changes to people's bodies that are being done manually by humans, and to see if there's a huge wave of genetic consequences, biological consequences, whether it's some of the diseases you were talking about. That's going to be a very interesting case study. And I'm sure people are going to try to pinpoint it to any other correlation they can, but there's definitely just factual causations that happen. There's just
Yeah,
science.
yeah, you're right. Now I had a clinic, I just sold it in Miami Beach, and I had a partner, we did stem cells. So I still do, I'll still do work with people, but use the umbilical cords, the stem cells from donor umbilical cords, and you
Yeah.
can do great things with it. Like I had somebody who had a friend out of state, and she's like, yeah, I know that so and so caused me to have type 1 diabetes. That's the autoimmune one where your body just starts eating you know eating the pancreas, and
Yeah.
so there are studies out there about the stem cells fixing it. So we can use stem cells to help some of these things. At any rate, you can do a stem cell infusion, like an IV infusion, that will, if you do exosomes, which are just the messengers, not the whole cell. We don't use the whole cell in this country. That's what they do abroad, and that's what can have some risk of disease because you're getting the DNA of somebody else when you do whole cell therapy. I don't know. Some people say yes, some people say no. In this country, we don't. We just use the exosome or the Wharton's jelly
Yeah.
from the umbilical cord. But if you use the exosomes, they can penetrate the blood-brain barrier. There's a lot of studies at right now where they're using high doses of it to help with heart disease and neurodegenerative diseases. So with regards to the point you bring up, I think that stem cells are the future for that. I was in 3 car accidents and I had really bad migraines myself. I don't know why I didn't do this, like, oh, because of money. I couldn't afford it. I didn't do it before, but I finally got the Wharton's jelly injection in my neck. It was, I don't have the migraine. Like I was debilitated with neck pain all the time, like 7 out of
Yeah.
10 pain. And now it's like a 2 or 3. Totally different. My migraines are markedly reduced. I couldn't be happier about, like, keeping my ties with the regenerative medicine, because I think that is going to help a lot of problems.
Well, you brought up a great point there indirectly, which is, and you mentioned it earlier with the dentistry, the absolutely ridiculous price of getting, surgeries done, medical treatments, and all of this and that. I think it's just ridiculous. I don't have prices available, but I know like these surgeries are costing thousands and thousands of dollars, sometimes, tens
Mhm.
of thousands of dollars for something that it's interesting. How do we price the labor and knowledge of someone doing a surgery? And, if
Yeah.
what'll be interesting is if we replace a lot of these surgeries with robotics and AI and the price stays the same, it's now they're going to say, oh, well, the equipment's expensive and this is expensive. So what are we really saving there other than maybe time? But it's definitely
Shortage.
interesting.
You know why? Is because these doctors get screwed over, man. I see, like, I see where these residents, like, they get worked like dogs, and it's better than it used to be because they put some regulations in on how many hours they can work these kids, but
Yeah.
like the wages have dropped. And, they haven't kept up with inflation. The last hospital I worked at, they hadn't, it was during COVID. We finally were like, you have to raise our wages. They hadn't raised them since 2008. And after we put up like a big stink, like, you're paying all these travelers X plus, like, double what we're making, they give us a $1 raise. $1. Are you kidding me? The price of housing
Uh,
in South Florida has quadrupled in that time. And you want to raise us $1?
yeah.
People simply can't afford to work in the healthcare system. It's yeah, I have a friend who does surgeries, and he gets mostly people from Central and South America, but he stopped taking all insurances. He's like, I can't even afford to take he stopped taking Medicare last year. I was listening to his video on like TikTok or Instagram. He's like, it pains me to do this, to turn people away. He's like, but I can't, he's not in a hospital. He has his own standalone building. He's like, I can't cover my expenses with what Medicare is reimbursing. Like, I can't pay the anesthesiologist. Like, I lose money when I use Medicare. So I have to use cash to cover my expenses. He's like, I mean, it's South Florida. I know South Florida is more expensive than other markets, but it's a problem in healthcare. That's a whole nother thing. He wrote a book called Healthcare from the Trenches, where he
Mm.
proposes a lot of different things. And he was doing a podcast for a while, interviewing politicians, trying to get some movement in the system. But that's a guerrilla with lobbyists, and they will never, ever, it's like you're
Yeah.
going against the whole insurance industry. I had, with the rise of blockchain and Web3, I came across a company in Southeast Asia called Bamboo, Bambu, I think maybe. They spelled it a little differently, but it was 5 countries. They put their healthcare on the blockchain using wearables. And because diabetes is so rampant, there's something about the genetics, or maybe it's the lifestyle because they're working at night as virtual assistants for us. But
Right.
there's a huge predisposition for type 2 diabetes in Southeast Asia, not even being overweight. There's a lot of really thin people with type 2 diabetes in Southeast Asia. So their healthcare system is heavily burdened by that. So what they did is put the healthcare on the blockchain. That means everything. I don't know if you know anything, if you own any crypto, but if you own or trade anything, every transaction is public. So that saves them a lot of money, and people get these incentives. The more they eat well, the more they shop. I mean, yeah, you're tracking your information. It's all on the blockchain, but people get incentivized to take care of themselves better. I mean, you could do, I think putting healthcare on the blockchain would be helpful. That saves money. There's a jurisdiction in United Arab Emirates, not Dubai, but a similar city nearby. And they put all of their deeds to the houses, like essentially the clerk of courts, all on the blockchain. And they saved millions of dollars the first year. So now they're like expanding to more counties. Technology,
Yeah.
but I don't know if we'll ever get healthcare on the blockchain. There's too many greedy people, the same people that create wars,
Right.
countries. They're creating wars in our country, on our wars on our bodies, wars on our bank accounts.
Yeah. And there was actually a guy on, I don't watch the Joe Rogan podcast, but there was a guy talking about the insurance companies and the flow of money and how we're paying these tens of thousands of dollars, yet where is all that money going, right? Because if it's not going to the nurses and doctors' wages, you're talking about low wages, and where are they going? So it's definitely an interesting topic. And ladies and gentlemen, if you learned anything from today's episode, it's if you ever meet Dr. Sarah Doyle, don't get in a car with her. 3 crashes, that's a high crash rate.
I wasn't a
That's above average
driver.
crash rate.
None of them were my fault. I guess I'm bad luck.
You're a common denominator, though, you know. I'm
Well,
not
no,
saying you were driving. It's just if you're in a car with you, it's a likely chance there's going to be a crash.
okay, it's Miami. Okay. Most people were not born in this country, and
Florida
they,
drivers, yeah.
yeah, no, Miami's crazy. If you've ever like gone to like Colombia and seen the way they drive, or look at like or Cuba, oh my God, like it's crazy. It's a war. It's a war. It's a jungle out there. I
The
don't, I,
whole southeast coast in general, because when I lived in South Carolina, I was like, these are the worst drivers ever. I moved to Virginia, I was like, these are even worse drivers. And then I moved to Georgia, and it's fine until you have Florida drivers come in. And then I go down and visit Florida all the time, and it's just everyone drives fast and reckless. But if
or,
you're in Florida and you know that, you just drive the same way and it's all fine. The issue is, as long as everyone's going fast, it's fine. But then if you have someone, and that's, I get it. But the issue
yeah,
with
no, the left lane is 80 miles an hour or faster. The right lane
yeah,
is the speed limit, and the middle is like, okay, somewhere in the middle, maybe 10, 20 miles over. I know it's
yeah, well, and everywhere I've lived at, because I was always at military bases, those are the worst places. Those areas, especially like Norfolk, where you've got 7 different military bases, or even South Carolina, where you've got Joint Air Force and Navy. Like you said, there's people from all these different states, and they just all drive differently, and every state thinks that they have the best drivers, and that the other
no
states are the
way.
worst drivers.
Have you been to Southcom in Doral here? It's
No,
probably even worse.
you
Yeah, it's money. Yeah, but if you learn anything from me today, is that you don't have to rely on prescriptions to get your mental health right. You can reach me on Instagram or YouTube. It's 7X Method, just like my book, the number 7, the letter X, and method. If you or have a mother, a sister, or you personally, we all have moms, a wife, girlfriend, and they're struggling with hormone issues, they can't sleep, they're losing their hair, they're having brain fog, they're having difficulty concentrating, anxiety, depression, all these things come along with our second puberty. I'm doing a $2,000 discount to all your listeners The discount code will be whiskey with a capital W, whiskey 2000. So all of your listeners will get a $2,000 discount on my. So if you go on my website, it's drsarahdoyle.com, DRSARAHDOYLE, drsarahdoyle.com. You'll see where you can click on a biohacking bootcamp. It'll say $5,000, or I might have to raise my prices. My marketing expenses keep going up, but you'll get a $2,000 discount code. It'll be whiskey 2000. If you are not sure, you can just book a $99 telehealth consultation with me. We can talk about, like, if you've gone to other doctors and you feel like you've had enough testing, you just need a little bit of help, you can book something with me there. I'm happy to help. Or you can just message me on Instagram if you're not sure where to start. There are natural ways to help yourself. You don't need to take antidepressants. You don't need to take ADHD medications. You don't need to take bioidentical hormones. There's natural ways to fix you. God gave us everything we need on this planet. And I'm just trying to bring about a resurgence of how we can use it.
Right.
Yeah, that's to live in harmony, you know?
Yeah, and I appreciate you going on shows and, tackling you said you were Gen X, the fight against learning social media and podcasting and all of that. You're doing a great job. You have great energy. So I appreciate
Thank
you
you.
getting out there and putting out this message in a world that is drowning it out. So I really appreciate having you on the show.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, we got to spread the word. Help. If we just help one person every show, then it's a victory.
Sailing through the ocean blue, nuclear reactors my crew, guiding the ship, the stars as our guide, through the waves we ride, jokes and laughter fill the air. On this voyage we have to share, working together, side by side, as one family we will abide. In the heart of the ship we reside, nuclear operators with pride, powering the vessel with every stride. Our mission, a source of great pride.